What if one evening meant to bring everyone together became the night that tore everything apart? Madison Harper had spent the entire afternoon preparing. The dining table was set with her grandmother's good china, the kind she only brought out for special occasions. Candles flickered in glass holders, casting warm light across the room. She'd made lasagna from scratch, garlic bread, and even baked a chocolate cake that now sat cooling on the counter. Tonight was supposed to be perfect. Tonight was supposed to fix things. Her husband David had been distant for months. Not in the obvious way, no late nights at the office, no suspicious phone calls, but in the quiet, painful way where someone is physically present but emotionally gone. They'd sit at breakfast together without speaking, pass each other in hallways without touching, sleep in the same bed like strangers sharing a bus seat. Their daughter Lily had noticed. 17 years old and far too perceptive for her own good, she'd stopped asking questions weeks ago. Instead, she spent most of her time locked in her room, headphones on, shutting out the cold silence that had settled over their home like frost. Tonight was supposed to change that, Madison had suggested. A family game night. Something simple. Something fun. A way to remember what it felt like to laugh together, to be a family again. David had agreed without much enthusiasm, but he'd agreed. That was something. Lily came downstairs first, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing an oversized sweater that had once belonged to her father. She glanced at the table and then at Madison, her expression unreadable. "This looks nice, Mom," she said quietly. "Thank you, sweetheart." Madison forced a smile. "Where's your dad?" "In his study. He said he'd be down in a minute." A minute turned into 10, then 20. Madison stood in the kitchen, wringing her hands, watching the candles burn lower. Finally, she heard footsteps on the stairs. David appeared in the doorway, still wearing his work clothes dress shirt, slacks, tie loosened but not removed. He looked tired, older than he had just a year ago. "Sorry," he said flatly. "Got caught up with emails." They sat down to eat, and the silence was unbearable. Madison tried to fill it with small talk questions about Lily's classes, comments about the weather, mentions of an upcoming neighborhood event. Lily gave short answers. David barely responded at all. The lasagna tasted like cardboard in Madison's mouth. After dinner, she cleared the plates and brought out the board games. Trivial Pursuit, Scrabble, Cards Against Humanity, though she quickly realized that one might be too risky given the current mood. She settled on a classic Clue. "Come on," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "It'll be fun, just like old times." Lily sat down first, pulling her chair closer to the table. David hesitated, then joined them, his movements slow and reluctant. They set up the game in silence, distributing cards, choosing tokens. Madison picked Miss Scarlet. She always picked Miss Scarlet. They played for 20 minutes. Madison asked questions, made guesses, tried to keep the mood light. But the tension was thick enough to choke on. David barely looked at the board. Lily kept checking her phone under the table. Then Madison drew a card. A simple suggestion card. She read it aloud without thinking. "Professor Plum, in the library, with the candlestick." David's face went white. Madison frowned. "What?" He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I can't do this." "David, I can't sit here and pretend everything's fine when it's not." His voice was louder now, sharper. "I can't keep playing these games, Madison." Lily's eyes went wide. She set down her phone and stared at her father. "What are you talking about?" Madison's heart was pounding. "It's just a game." "No," David shook his head. "It's not just a game. It's this whole night. It's this whole charade. You think setting the table and lighting candles is going to fix us?" Madison stood too, her hands trembling. "I'm trying, David. I'm trying to bring us back together." "There's nothing to bring back." His words landed like stones. "We've been falling apart for years, and you know it." Lily pushed her chair back. "Dad, stop," but he didn't stop. "Do you want to know why I've been distant? Why, I can't look at you the same way anymore? Madison's breath caught. David, please, because I don't know who you are anymore. His voice cracked. I don't know when it happened. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and started being roommates. Strangers. The room went silent. The candles flickered. Outside, a car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating the walls before fading into darkness. Madison felt something break inside her chest. So what are you saying? David looked at her, and for the first time in months, she saw real emotion in his eyes. Pain, regret, exhaustion. I don't know, he whispered. I don't know what I'm saying. He turned and walked out of the room. A moment later, they heard the front door open and close. The sound of his car starting, the crunch of gravel as he drove away. Lily sat frozen, staring at the empty chair where her father had been. Madison sank back into her seat, her legs unable to hold her any longer. The game board sat between them, pieces scattered, questions unanswered. Mom, Lily's voice was small. Scared, Madison couldn't speak. She just shook her head and covered her face with her hands, and that's when everything fell apart. How do you rebuild something when you don't even know where the cracks began? The next morning, Madison woke up on the couch. She'd fallen asleep there sometime after midnight, too exhausted to make it upstairs. The house was cold, quiet. She checked her phone, no messages from David, no missed calls. She found Lily in the kitchen making coffee. Her daughter's eyes were red-rimmed, puffy. She hadn't slept either. Did he come back? Lily asked, without looking up. No. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where they'd tried to play a game less than 12 hours ago. Madison wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, letting the warmth seep into her skin. Mom, what's happening? Lily's voice broke. Are you guys getting divorced? Madison wanted to say no. She wanted to reassure her daughter that everything would be fine. That this was just a rough patch, that marriages go through hard times. But she couldn't lie. I don't know, honey. I really don't know. Lily's tears spilled over. This is my fault, isn't it? If I'd been easier, if I hadn't been so moody all the time? No. Madison reached across the table and grabbed her daughter's hand. No, Lily, this has nothing to do with you. You hear me? Nothing. Then why is he leaving? He's not. Madison stopped. Was he leaving? She didn't even know. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Staying at Mike's for a few days. Need some space to think? I'm sorry, asterisk. Madison stared at the words until they blurred. Space to think. What did that even mean? She spent the day in a fog. Lily went to school, though Madison wasn't sure how she'd manage to focus. Madison called in sick to work and sat in the empty house, replaying the night before over and over in her mind. Asterisk, we stopped being partners and started being strangers. Asterisk, when had that happened? When had they stopped talking? When had they stopped touching? When had they stopped caring? She thought back to the early years of their marriage, the way David used to kiss her goodbye every morning, even when he was running late. The way they'd stay up until 2 a.m. talking about their dreams, their fears, their plans. The way he'd look at her like she was the only person in the room. When had that stopped? She went upstairs to their bedroom and opened David's closet. His clothes were still there, shirts hanging neatly, shoes lined up on the floor. She pulled out one of his sweaters, navy blue, worn at the elbows, and held it to her face. It smelled like him, like cedar and faint cologne and something else she couldn't name. She sank to the floor, clutching the sweater, and let herself cry. That evening, Lily came home and found her mother in the same spot. Mom, Lily knelt beside her. You can't do this. I can't just fall apart. Madison looked at her daughter, this fierce, beautiful girl who'd grown up to fast and saw strength she didn't know she had herself. I don't know how to fix this, Madison whispered. Then don't, Lily said. Not yet. Just get up, take a shower, eat something. We'll figure out the rest later. Lily helped her mother to her feet, and for a moment, their roles reversed. the child caring for the parent. Madison let herself be guided to the bathroom, let Lily turn on the shower and close the door behind her, standing under the hot water. Madison closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe, to think clearly, to stop drowning in panic and start swimming towards something solid. When she got out, she dried off and dressed in clean clothes. Lily had made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup comfort food from when she was little. They ate together at the kitchen table, not talking much, just being there. Afterward, Madison picked up her phone and called David. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Hi." His voice was cautious. "Hi," she took a breath. "Can we talk? Really talk?" There was a long pause. Then, "Yeah, I think we need to. Tomorrow? At the house." "Okay, tomorrow." They hung up and Madison felt a tiny flicker of something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the breaking point before something new could begin. Can you love someone and still lose them? Or is love enough to rebuild what's been broken? David came home the next afternoon. He looked like he hadn't slept either, hair disheveled, stubble shadowing his jaw, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Madison let him in, and they sat in the living room, the space between them on the couch feeling like an ocean. "I'm sorry for walking out," David started. "That wasn't fair to you. Or to Lily." "No, it wasn't." Madison's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "But I'm glad you did." He looked surprised. "What?" "Because you were right. We've been pretending for too long." She met his eyes. "I've been pretending, thinking if I just tried harder, if I made everything perfect, we'd go back to how we used to be. But you can't force that. You can't game night your way out of real problems." David exhaled slowly. "I don't know when it happened, Maddie. I don't know when we stopped connecting. I think it's been gradual. Little things. You got that promotion and started working longer hours. I got busy with the PTA and volunteering. Lily got older and needed us differently. We stopped making time for each other. Stopped making time for us." David agreed quietly. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a bird sang. The refrigerator hummed. Life continued around them, indifferent to their pain. "Do you still love me?" Madison asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, God, yes. Maddie, I never stopped loving you. That's what makes this so hard. I love you, but I don't know how to be with you anymore. We're like 2 people speaking different languages." "Then we learn," Madison said. "We learn to speak the same language again. Is it that simple?" "No." She shook her head. "It's not simple at all. It's going to be hard and messy and uncomfortable. But I think it's worth trying. Don't you?" David looked at Hurley, for the first time in months. He saw the woman he'd married 15 years ago, the one who'd held his hand during his father's funeral, who'd stayed up with him when he was terrified about becoming a dad, who'd built a life with him brick by brick. "Yeah," he said softly, "I do." Madison reached across the couch and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, tentative at first, then firmer. "I think we need help," she said. "Counseling, therapy, whatever you want to call it. I don't think we can do this alone." David nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing. And we need to be honest with each other. Really honest. Even when it hurts. Okay? And we need to be patient. With each other and with ourselves. This isn't going to be fixed in a week or a month. It's going to take time. I can do that." David squeezed her hand. "If you can, I can." They sat there holding hands, and it wasn't a grand romantic gesture or a movie-worthy reunion. It was just 2 broken people choosing to try. Choosing each other. Even when it was hard. Lily came home an hour later and found them sitting together on the couch talking quietly. Relief washed over her face. "Does this mean?" She didn't finish the sentence. "It means we're going to try," Madison said, pulling her daughter into a hug. "We're going to try to fix this. As a family." David wrapped his arms around both of them. And they stayed like that, 3 people clinging to each other, hoping it would be enough. What if the moment everything falls apart is actually the moment everything begins to come together? 3 months later, Madison stood in the kitchen making dinner. Not fancy lasagna or elaborate meals, just spaghetti and salad, simple. Real. David came home from work and kissed her on the cheek, a small gesture, but one that had returned. They'd been going to therapy every week, sometimes together, sometimes separately. It was hard. Some sessions left them both raw and exhausted. But slowly, things were shifting. They'd learned to talk again. Not about schedules or bills or Lily's college applications, but about feelings, fears, dreams, the things they'd buried under years of routine. David had cut back his hours at work. Madison had stepped down from half her volunteer commitments. They'd started dating again, actual dates where they dressed up and went out and remembered what it felt like to choose each other. Lily was doing better too. She'd seen a therapist of her own and was opening up more. The house felt lighter, warmer, like something frozen had finally begun to thaw. That evening, after dinner, Lily brought out a box from her closet. "I found this," she said, setting it on the table. "Remember?" Madison opened it. Inside were old board games, Monopoly. Sorry, life games they used to play when Lily was little, before life got complicated. "Want to play?" Lily asked, a tentative smile on her face. Madison looked at David. He looked back at her. And for the first time in a long time, they both smile. Genuine smiles. "Yeah," Madison said. "Let's play." They set up the game, and this time it was different. There was laughter, teasing. Lily accused David of cheating. David accused Madison of hoarding all the good cards. Madison accused them both of ganging up on her. It wasn't perfect. They still had hard days. They still argued sometimes. They still had work to do. But as Madison looked around the table at her family, her husband who was learning to be present, her daughter who was learning to trust again, herself who was learning to let go of perfection, she realized something. That night when everything fell apart hadn't been the end. It had been the beginning of honesty, of vulnerability, of choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. The game night that broke them had also saved them, because sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be put back together the right way. Sometimes you have to lose each other to find each other again. Sometimes the moment you think it's over is actually the moment it begins. Madison reached across the table and took David's hand. He squeezed back, and in that simple gesture and that choice to hold on was everything. They kept playing. The candles burned low. The night stretched on. And for the first time in a long time, the Harper family was whole again. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. And that was enough.